This is episode 148 of the Prepper Website Podcast. Today's articles are The Ugly Part of Water Purification, the top 5 mistakes you make, Situational Awareness and how to determine who has it and who doesn't, and Make Your Own Penetrating Oil. Hey, I'm Todd Sepulveda, the editor of PrepperWebsite.com. This podcast is an audible version with some commentary of articles that have been posted on Prepper Website, a daily curation of preparedness information. These articles are some of the best that have been recently posted on PrepperWebsite.com. All article links and show information can be found on the PrepperWebsitePodcast.com. Hey, just a couple of things really quick before we get started. We were here and we were having a small group a little earlier, and we've heard some big planes fly over the house lately. And I was kind of, hey, what's going on? Someone said that it was they're probably spraying for mosquitoes. Which they have been really, really bad. Well, somebody said that, a week after all that rain, that, we were going to have mosquitoes really bad. And sure enough, that has happened. And so they're out spraying. I noticed on our neighborhood Facebook page that they had just mentioned that there was going to be spraying. And if you were concerned about it, to make sure that you stay indoors. And if you're a beekeeper, which there is a local guy that we get honey from that has some beehives not too far away from here. They said if you're a beekeeper and you're worried about your bees, then make sure you cover them up. So of course they're going to say that the spray that they're spraying is that it's okay and it's been approved and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff. But you still have to wonder about it when you're, when they're spraying that massive stuff out there and killing all those mosquitoes, how all that works. And so anyway, that's crazy. I guess Florida is going to be dealing with that as well, and all the other, Louisiana and all the other states. And I know that a lot of water was up, not just in Florida, but in Georgia and some of the other states that were there. Still haven't been able to follow up too much on what's going on over there. I know things aren't good, but I just been so busy lately. I haven't been able to do too much, going into the alternative news sites that I normally do. One thing that did come across, and this was on Drudge Report, the crazy little man in North Korea fired off another missile over Japan. I mean, it's one thing when you're sending it off into the air and then blowing it up, or just sending it right into the ocean. But when you're sending it over another country, man, that's crazy. I mean, it's like, that's like a death wish stuff. So I don't know what this guy is doing. I don't know what the purpose of it is. But you can just imagine that there's going to be something. I mean, something's going to happen here. And so just be ready for it. I guess we always stay prepped and aware. But I don't understand what that little crazy man is doing over there. This morning, I listened to a prophecy update by Amir Sarfati. And if you are into, I think what is kind of crazy is lately people that wouldn't even ever bring this up, and maybe people that I'd never even considered that were religious or Christian or even kind of looked at end time stuff, have brought up the fact, and maybe they're bringing it up to me because they know I'm a minister, I don't know, but bring it in and want to know what I think. But bringing up the fact is like and I think the wording was something similar to this, is like, with all the fires, all the hurricanes and all the devastation and all the things that are out there, you got to kind of wonder what is going on. And so, and that conversation has happened more than 2 or 3 times for me here recently. And Amir Sarfati, in his prophecy update for September 13th, he talks a little bit about that and talks a little bit about what's going on the global. One thing we look at, national news and stuff like that. He's looking at it from a global standpoint. And I did like his analysis this time around and his insights, because he's ex-military from Israel. And he's a minister. He preaches and he talks a lot about prophecy and things like that. If you're into that, and that's something that you're into, the end times, or so maybe something that you're not completely familiar with, but you'd like to get a little bit more information on, I'm going to go ahead and link to this in the show notes. his current events and Bible prophecy update. He does have a YouTube channel, Behold Israel, and you can get him on, you can, of course, YouTube, you can Twitter and all that kind of stuff, Facebook. He does a lot of Facebook Live videos as well. So, but if you're interested in that, he talks a lot more than just about natural disasters. But again, I really did like his analysis and his commentary on what's been going on recently in the world. So you might want to go check that out. Hey, I've been talking about the Back to the Basics Living Summit. You still have some time when you're checking this one out. It is September 14th. This is the Friday podcast. So you still have 2 more days worth of that. So what will happen is if you go register, they will send you out links to be able to watch all the all the presenters for that day, and it goes from 8 o'clock that morning till 5 o'clock the next morning. So even if you're listening to this on Friday morning, Friday afternoon, you still have, if you register and they send out that email right away, you still have time to look at the presentations that you're interested in. And so I am going to link to the page where you go and you input all your first name and your email and all that kind of stuff. And so you might want to go check that out over at the Back to Basics Living Summit. It's interesting. It's a free summit, and so get a lot of good information over there. All right, so I do have some cool articles, like always. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first article comes to us from survivalpedia.com. And again, the article is entitled "The Ugly Part of Water Purification: The Top 5 Mistakes You Make." Water purification, or dealing with water, is one of the big topics. It's one of the ones that if you ever join the email list, you join the email list and you get you automatically get enrolled into the free e-course, Make a More Self-Reliant Life. But while that e-course is loading up for you and it's getting sent out to you, I sent an email out that it's an automatic email, but it asked if you would fill out this survey. And so it kind of asks you, it's just 2 questions. How long have you been prepping, and how long, or what is the most important aspect in regards to preparedness for you? And water is one of those big ones that a lot of people say that is their big preparedness thing that they're considering, and that maybe that they're worried about. So when I see a good article on water, I want to link to it. I want to definitely bring it up on the podcast. So let's go ahead and get into this one. I think this is one that you might want to go out and actually print this one out. So here we go. Water is part of the survival triad: water, food, and shelter. You can only live for about 3 days without it, and even after 24 hours, you start experiencing physical and cognitive decline. Right now, it's easy to turn on the tap and get fresh, clean water, but even without a SHTF situation, many of us are doing what we can to live off the grid. I've written several articles on collecting rainwater and purifying water, and now I'd like to discuss how to make sure that your water is safe to drink. Water purification is a primary skill that you need to have, even if you don't know much about other facets of survival, because if you don't have clean water, you'll die. It's that simple. The EPA warns that as much as 90% of all of the water on the planet is contaminated in some way. So this is becoming a bigger issue for many of us who are trying to get off the grid. Even rainwater can be contaminated, and it's best to assume that all groundwater needs purified. Even though being able to purify water during daily life and in an emergency situation is critical, you need to do it right. Improperly purified water can be just as fatal, but much more miserable than having no water at all, so be sure not to make these mistakes. Mistaking water filtering and water purification. There are many water filters out there. There's a good chance that you have one in your fridge right now. But don't make the mistake of thinking that filtered water is the same as purified water. Most water filters do exactly what they say. They filter out physical impurities such as debris, minerals, and pollutants such as insecticides. Most of them don't purify the water, though, because illness-causing microbes are too small to be caught in the filter, nor are the filters designed to kill them. Your water may look clean and clear and delicious, but it may also be deadly. There are only 2 ways to ensure that your water is pure: heat and chemicals. Not getting water hot enough. Though pathogens start to die as the water heats at 160 degrees Fahrenheit to be exact, there are many diseases causing bacteria and viruses that won't die until the water reaches the boiling point of 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Keeping that in mind, you need to maintain a roiling boil for at least 1 minute, and 3 is better, especially at higher elevations. If you're short on water and worry about losing it to evaporation, putting a lid on the pot will help with that. Then just leave it covered until it cools. Using chemical purification incorrectly. There are a few ways that you could mess up chemical purification. First, you can use too much. This is most definitely not a case of more being better, because whether you're using iodine, sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach, or calcium chlorite, which is pool shock, too much of it can make you sick or even kill you. If you're using iodine, use 5 drops per quart for clear water and 10 drops per quart if cloudy. If you're using bleach, use 5 drops per quart for clear water and 10 drops per quart if cloudy. If you're using calcium hypochlorite, dilute a teaspoon of the powder in a gallon of water, then add two-thirds ounces of that to a gallon of water. A small shot glass is useful because it usually holds 1 ounce. So again, that was two-thirds ounce of that to a gallon of water, not two-thirds cup, just in case you're listening and you're taking notes. It's two-thirds ounce of that to a gallon of water. All right, so there are also a few things to keep in mind when choosing your water purification method. Liquid bleach has a shelf life of 6 to 12 months, so it expires and loses its strength. Pool shock keeps forever, and a 1 pound bag will treat 10,000 gallons. Guys, you can get a 1 pound bag like at Walmart, at Home Depot, at Lowe's. They're not very expensive. 1 pound bags, they might be like $7, $6.99, depending. You can definitely get them on, off of Amazon. So, if 1 pound will treat 10,000 gallons, that might be something that you might want to include in your preps. Now, we do own a pool. My dad was before he retired, was in the pool business, owned a pool company. His backyard was not big enough for a pool, so he called in a lot of favors. He did really good business. The people loved him, so they gave him really great deal to put a pool in our backyard. And so one thing that I will tell you is that some of the chemicals with pool that you will be dealing with if you own a pool are very corrosive. And so, if you have, there's, horror stories of people who have kept their pool chemicals around, like their air condition outside, and just because it was around there, started eating into the metal and eating into some of their pipes and ruined it. Or some people have talked about maybe their water heater, they kept them in the garage and it wasn't ventilated very well. And so, that's something to consider when you are dealing with chemicals. And so, especially pool chemicals and how corrosive they are, you might want to put them in a very tight sealed container, airtight container, so they won't go out there and corrode any important things that you have, water heaters or whatever, pipes or whatever you might have out there. So I just wanted to kind of give you that information, because if you're not familiar with that, that can be a very costly mistake if you're not paying attention. Okay, so iodine makes the water taste weird, but if you let it sit for an hour, you can add vitamin C or Tang drink mix or something similar to eliminate most of the bad taste after the purification period is up. Make sure that if you're using bleach or pool shock, that the product is pure without any additional additives such as perfumes. Let the water sit for at least 30 minutes before drinking. One more thing, I'm talking about pool shock. There might be some pool shock that you have like maximum strength. You might have like regular pool shock. So you kind of want to get just the regular pool shock when you're looking at that. And again, you need to go check out the article that Gay wrote over at Backdoor Survival. And I have read that before on the podcast. And actually, I'll go ahead and link to it in the mention mentioned in this podcast section, so that you can go ahead and go check that one out as well, because she gives some advice about pull shock that you need to be taking care of and picking up. So you might not want maximum strength pull shock. You're going to want probably the regular strength pull shock when you're talking about that. All right, continuing on, cross contamination. This one seems like it may be simple, but it's easy to recontaminate purified water. Make sure that you don't use the same containers or utensils for the clean water that you used before it was purified. In other words, don't gather the water from a stream in your water bottle, boil it, then put it back in your bottle. You just recontaminated your water and wasted time and fuel. If you're purifying in your bottle, make sure to pour some of the chemical into the lid and around the threads or the mouth of the container. Failing to purify and filter. This is another reason that you need to understand that filtering and purifying are two different processes. You need to purify your water to rid it of illness causing pathogens, but you need to purify it to remove chemical toxins such as fertilizers and insecticides. Of course, it also removes any other debris such as sand, rocks, and minerals. It doesn't really matter what order you do it in, but I recommend filtering first, then purifying, just because it's cleaner and there's less risk of cross contamination. Either way, strain water that has visible debris in it before you purify it or filter it. Run it through a coffee filter or a densely woven cloth such as a bandana. Just a note, chemical purification is most effective if the water is at least 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Studies show that at 50 degrees, only 90% of Giardia cysts were inactivated after 30 minutes. Warm up the water in the sun or after it cools a bit from purifying, or let the water sit for an hour. Failing to purify your water can cause such diseases as cholera, E. coli, rotavirus, hepatitis, staphylococcus, cryptosporidium, and giardia. Sorry on that, getting tongue-tied. These cause everything from upset stomach and cramps to severe vomiting, diarrhea, and even death. In other words, it's nothing to mess around with unless you want to die a slow, miserable death. Don't put your life at risk. You need only clear water to stay safe. All right. So good article there. I think it really nails the difference between purification and filtering, and talks about the ways to do that. Gives you some clear action steps as far as what if you're going to use iodine, bleach, or you're going to start using shock, those kinds of things. So good water. You might want to go back and revisit this one. This one does have links that you might want to go click on. There's a few comments here, about 8 comments in here that you might want to check out. And like I said, I always think it's a good idea to read the comments. You can always learn more information when you're reading those comments. So go check that out over at survivalpedia.com, and we will, like always, link to it at the Prepper Website podcast and also in the show notes. All right, our next article comes to us from skilledsurvival.com. The article is entitled Situational Awareness, How to Determine Who Has It and Who Doesn't. We recently talked about situational awareness in your hometown earlier or in your own local neighborhood. It was an article that I wrote at Ed That Matters, and we read it on the podcast earlier this week. And so you might want to go check that one out. But this one on situational awareness is just an overall good general article, and to give you some really good information on that. And so looking forward to talking about this one. If you're new to preparedness, or even if you are experienced in preparedness, situational awareness is something that you should be. You don't want to become lax in it. It's easy to you start out with the mindset of you're being aware and you're paying attention to what's going on, and eventually you start to become a little bit lax. And so articles like this help us to really get down to hey, you know what, or gets us to remember that we need to be vigilant at all times. So let's go ahead and get into this article. All right, got to take a drink. All right. Have you ever seen someone smiling when things are going very wrong all around them? I've heard it said, he's smiling because he doesn't fully understand just how royally bleep we are. I also once overheard a question and answer between two ex military friends of mine. What would you do if you knew a Soviet ICBM was inbound at your location? The answer? I'd place my head between my legs and kiss my butt goodbye. There's no getting away from that. These are two examples of situational awareness. The smiling guy has none, versus the military guys have about as much as one can. The definition of situational awareness. So, what exactly is situational awareness? Often shortened to the acronym SA, pronounced SA. Situational awareness is fully and comprehensively understanding one's surroundings, environment, and situation. Full situational awareness includes the following: the current level of danger, the level of difficulty, support, obstacles in the way, exit locations, contributing factors, etc. If you have good situational awareness, you know the actual score. If you have poor situational awareness, you're mostly lost. Lost people are of little help unless the goal is to get lost or disappear, and even then, they may not have the situational awareness to do it successfully. It's important to know this about someone before you find yourself in an emergency situation with them for two primary reasons. He will be of little to no help, and he may not even realize the situation is life or death, which can be worse than no help. How to recognize someone lacking SA. We've all known people who possess poor situational awareness. Most of us can think of at least one person out there we've dealt with that just doesn't get it. You wonder, if you could see through this person's eyes, would even the sky still be blue or the grass green? When speaking with this person, eye contact is fleeting and unfocused. In fact, unfocused describes this person very well in many respects. When they occasionally do meet your stare, you see the utter confusion, and oddly enough, you might see it when there's no apparent reason to be confused. I knew one military guy who had these attributes: the 100-yard stare and brief confused eye contact, plus constant comments which indicated he didn't fully understand what was going on around him. While that 1,000-yard gaze might be a symptom of poor situational awareness, it mustn't be confused with something else. I've known guys with that same unfocused gaze, always staring off into space. However, they would come back with the absolute right answer at the right time. That's called being contemplative. Some people stare off into space as they formulate the best answer or strategy. It helps them focus on the task at hand, to look away and focus on something in the distance or even close their eyes. So, how do you tell the difference? The guy or gal with poor situational awareness either won't come back with an answer because they're disengaged and not thinking, or even worse, they'll come back with a terrible idea, and sometimes not just bad, but not even relevant. Do bad ideas prove a lack of situational awareness? Yes and no. Having finely tuned sense of situational awareness doesn't mean you're always right. A person who is actually aware of their situation can still have very poor judgment. However, a bad idea due to a lack of situational awareness tends to reflect an entire misunderstanding of the problem. One must understand the problem to be able to solve it correctly. And fully understand the problem is what we're talking about here. That's what SA is: words, conversation, nouns, verbs, adjectives. These are some of the best indicators of situational awareness. When you converse with someone about a problem, you can tell right away if they understand it. You know almost immediately if you're on the same page. You can hear it in their words and see it on their face. Well-timed humor can also come into play here. A well-played curse word or morsel of sarcasm is sometimes the best indicator someone completely understands the situation. By the way, if that sarcasm doesn't make sense to you, one of you doesn't fully understand what's going on. Hopefully, it's not you. How do you know if you've got situational awareness or not? Warren Buffett once said, "If you've been playing poker for half an hour and you still don't know who the patsy is, you're the patsy." This brings up another problem. We all want to be able to identify who among us has good situational awareness, but how do we know if we do? Most times, the guy with poor situational awareness doesn't even realize it. This is a tough one. It can come from inside. Validation of this fault must be external. The only advice I can give here is to seek out the counsel of someone you trust. someone you deem to be wise with good situational awareness and sound judgment. Maybe they have good insight about politics, technology, entertainment, sports, international affairs, whatever you typically discuss. If you find yourself understanding where he or she is coming from, you most likely have good situational awareness. You may not agree with his or her opinions, but you understand them. That's the key. People with good situational awareness won't always agree on solutions to problems, but they share a common understanding of the problem. Now, if you find you don't have a good situational awareness, and this is a difficult thing for anyone to admit, you have a problem. Most people will never admit it because they don't realize that they do not see things as they really are. It's very difficult to recognize it in oneself. But on the other side, chance you do recognize it, what can you do? Can situational awareness be learned? Simply put, yes, but with great effort. Usually, I'd say you either have good situational awareness or you don't. I've never known anyone to gain it suddenly. However, we are humans and we can learn new behaviors. People with good situational awareness naturally see things as they are. They recognize patterns and create paradigms in their thinking automatically with little conscious effort. It's a gift. However, someone who does not have the gift can work on it and develop it, at least in theory. What's going on in the world? First of all, quite often poor situational awareness comes from not being versed on what's going on in the world. A person striving to develop better situational awareness needs information. In the old days, I'd tell this person to watch the news or read a newspaper every day so you know what's going on out there. However, with the state of journalism today, there can be no assurance you aren't going to be ingesting a pack of lies. There is no such there is so much opinion, gossip, mudslinging, and downright lies in the media today, you can never be sure what's the truth. The internet is no help either. You can find news stories that say Arctic ice is melting at record levels, and also find stories that say satellite imaging shows Arctic ice is growing faster than ever before in history. You would be led to believe no president until Trump has ever threatened nuclear retaliation if the other side launches first. He didn't make a threat, he just dropped nukes on the enemy twice. If you read the media today, you'd think the KKK has a huge political force in American politics, when in reality their membership is estimated to be more like 3,000 Klan members, a microscopic fraction of the 300 million Americans. News stories today all have political agendas designed to hurt someone, both from the left and the right. There's no more objective fact telling. You have to establish your own BS filters. The great World Wide Web is a fantastic resource because it holds all the information of mankind, both right and wrong, which also makes it nearly useless. Educate yourself, but take everything with a grain of salt. In fact, the craziness you see in the news should help form useful paradigms. Learning patterns of media madness may hopefully help you recognize BS in the future. That can only help improve your situational awareness. Other forms of education to improve situational awareness include human physiology, survival skills, nutrition, technology, computers, firearms, political science, economics, banking, systems of government, world and U.S. history, and so on and on. The more you learn, the more you read, the more patterns and paradigms will form in your mind. Over time, situations will become better defined and you'll recognize them as they happen. And I would stress here, and I know that he's already kind of talked about it, but find someone that he said find someone that you trust, and so you start to, for instance, maybe you listen to podcasts, and there's someone out there that you trust, and you start to listen to them, and you start to understand their way of thinking and their way of analyzing things, right? And so when you maybe there's a big situation that comes up and you see on the podcast notes that they're going to be talking about something, and maybe in your mind you start thinking, hey, how would this person respond to this situation? And you kind of run it through your filters and run it through your head, and then you can listen to that podcast and see if they come up with the same kind of ideas and stuff like that. And so I do that very regularly. It's like, okay, so-and-so is talking about this. I wonder how they would, how they're going to come across, the situation. I wonder what their analysis is going to be, what their commentary is going to be, and try to process through that just a little bit before I actually listen to it and to see if I was right in the way that they would process it or not. So you can kind of check yourself on that, thinking and how other people are processing things as well. All right, so let's go on. A situational awareness example. Here's an example. A man's car breaks down on a little traveled road in the Mojave Desert. He sees a road sign that says next service station 15 miles. He thinks to himself, I can walk 3 to 4 miles an hour. That means I can be there in roughly 4 to 5 hours. In this case, he has just enough situational awareness to be dangerous. Yes, he knows it will be a long walk. He knows he can walk for 4 to 5 hours because he's done that in the past. Great. So, how does this essay come up short? He doesn't consider the fact that it's 105 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade. There is no shade. There is no cloud cover, and he has no water. He doesn't realize that the moment his car died, a biological stopwatch started, a countdown clock until the end of his life. A gallon of water would add time to that clock. Shade from the sun would add time to that clock. Shelter in the day and traveling at night would add time to the clock. Walking with no cover in the heat of the day takes time off the clock. He starts off on his journey and is found dead along the road 3 miles short of his goal. As I said before, good situational awareness is not the same as good judgment. However, it's the starting point for good judgment. You can't make a good decision, develop a good solution to a problem until you have the problem well defined. That means recognizing things that help as well as hurt. We often tend only to consider the negative, but good situational awareness also identifies assets and how they can help. In some cases, during my analysis of what I thought was a problem, I found many positive influences already lined up against the problem. It turned out the problem was no problem after all. No intervention was needed from me. My good situational awareness prevented me from wasting more time on an issue that was already solved. In some cases, too much situational awareness can be a problem. These people tend to be paranoid. They understand their situation but mentally extrapolate dire consequences that may never occur. What about too much situational awareness? Too much situational awareness can lead to mental breakdown. For example, I have found most women have struck the right balance of situational awareness. I was in a restaurant with my wife one evening, and we were talking about men scoping women in public. Men who steal those quick glances when an attractive woman walks by. You know, those glances that will get you in trouble with your own wife if caught. She said she was going to the restroom, and I chose that moment to make my point. I told her at least a half dozen men would steal a glance at her derriere on the walk to the restroom. She said I was crazy. She knew men stole those glances at women, but not at her and not at all the time. Confidently, she got up and walked to the restroom, and I saw at least a half dozen men uh, turn their gaze her way as she passed. She never noticed a single one. She has situational awareness. She's not oblivious, but not too much of it. Maybe it's a mental defense mechanism. I mean, if women they went if women went through their lives knowing every innocent stroll across the room would lead to a dozen men fantasizing about them, it would drive one crazy. Situational awareness for survival. First of all, do your best to self assess. Try to figure out if you have good or bad situational awareness. You can only improve if you admit you have room for improvement. If you have bad situational awareness, then I recommend you start working on it. Practice assessing problems and then coming up with answers. Then compare your analysis against someone you trust, someone who gets it. If you're blessed with good situational awareness, the best thing you can do is to avoid those who don't. Not much worse than ending up in a dangerous survival situation with an ignorant dolt. They won't just not help the situation, but they could become a serious liability. So keep an eye out for those with low or no situational awareness and beware of them. If you ever recognize someone like this, make some adjustments to your own situation. Stay away, just in case, Jack. So there's a couple of comments here that you can come check out. And then, of course, there's links throughout the article that you'll want to check out. But again, situational awareness is one of those things that you should practice. You should think about. You should be aware not only of what's going on, in your situation at all times, your local situation, but also the global aspect. That's why, I love reading alternative news. One of my I'm a double major. So my first major I went to school was for Christianity, right? My second major is in journalism or mass media, and so yeah, I went to school and we did a lot of journalism. My professor she really nailed down journalism. She came from the old school hard news. USA Today was starting to gain some popularity, and the fluff pieces were starting to gain some popularity, but they weren't taken seriously. And so her thing was all about hard news. And so as things have progressed, things have really changed, and that hard news is just it's not valued anymore. But that's one reason why I think the alternative news, the Alt News Hub on Prepper website is a very it's a popular page. It's the most popular page other than the front page of Prepper website. And so if you've never gone there before, you might want to go check that out, because we actually I've added just recently I've added two other alternative news sources there. So if you haven't been for a while, you can go check those out. But there's a lot there to kind of keep you busy. And so if you go to one place, if you want a one-stop shop for alternative news, that's definitely the place to go. You might want to even bookmark that one. So that's I'll link to that one in the show notes as well. All right, so that's skilledsurvival.com. Our last article comes to us from preparednessadvice.com. On Fridays, I like to find an article in the archive and bring it up. This one was written or released in January of 2013. So it's an older article, really old out there. I guess when you think about articles, especially since we're linking to articles every single day. But this article is entitled "Making Your Own Penetrating Oil." And so you might be like, Todd, really? What the heck? I'm just going to squirt some WD-40 or some liquid wrench in there. But this is very interesting. And so you might want to check this one out, because this is a homemade brew that seems to work better than anything else on the market. And so when we're talking about SHTF scenarios, or we're talking about situations where you don't go to the store anymore and buy your WD-40 or whatever, this might be the solution that you want. You might want this solution right now, actually, because it supposedly works better than anything else. So let's go ahead and read this one. Again, like I said, preparednessadvice.com. And the title is "Make Your Own Penetrating Oil." This is a short article, but it's one that you're probably going to want to go and make sure that you get this one down if you want to make it. So here we go. In case of a major change in our lifestyle that resulted in a collapse of society, we would be forced to improvise many things that we now take for granted. Just simple things like loosening a rusty bolt would be a challenge to many of us, not being experienced mechanics. Yesterday, a friend sent me information on a study performed by Machinist Workshop magazine in their April 2007 issue. They looked at different penetrating oils to see which one did the best job of removing a rusted bolt by measuring the pounds of torque required to loosen the bolt once treated. They arranged a subjective test of all the popular penetrants, with the control being the torque required to remove the nut from a scientifically rusted environment. Penetrating oils average torque load to loosen. So no oil used. It took 516 pounds. WD-40, 238 pounds. PB Blaster, 214 pounds. Liquid Wrench, 127 pounds. Cano Croil, 106 pounds. And ATF Acetone Mix, 53 pounds. The ATF mentioned above is automatic transmission fluid, not a federal agency. The ATF Acetone Mix is a home brew mix of 50-50 automatic transmission fluid and acetone. Now, this home brew released bolts better than any commercial product in the one particular test. In some additional comments that I found while double checking on the article, I found that with some of the new ATF fluids, it is hard to get a good mix. However, if you add a small amount of diesel oil to the mixture, this will help. All right. So very, very interesting there. Let me see here. There's one comment. Again, this is an old article. I'm going to read this comment here. Interesting history note about mixing oils and fuel. On the Eastern Front, the Russian winter is an enemy in its own right. The Russians had a practice of mixing their weapon oil and grease with diesel fuel. This was to extend the supplies, and they found out that diesel fuel helps prevent mechanical freezing. The Germans didn't pick up on this, and they had a much higher rate of weapon freeze at the worst possible time than their Soviet opponent. Good little information there. So, so the ATF, so automatic transmission fluid with acetone, and then a small amount of diesel oil to the mix will do this, and that's a big time. Big time change in or ratios there, going from 516 pounds with no oil to this 53 pounds with this mix that we're talking, this homegrown or homebrew mix. And the one that's above the 53, I mean, it's almost double that, 106 pounds. So if you have a situation where you have some rusty screws, or you need some help getting some things to break on you, some bolts, nuts and bolts to break on you, that might be something worthy to do. Maybe even put in a spray bottle. I don't even know if that would work, but maybe put in a spray bottle that where you can spray it in a steady stream, in a real solid stream. That could possibly work. So anyway, very interesting article. Those of you that are a little bit more hands-on, there's always times where I remember this one time we were up at the country when we were younger. Dad had another place that we had close to Palestine, Texas, and the hog, the bush hog got stuck, or the gear that goes out to the tractor got stuck, and we could not get it off to save our lives. And we used everything that we had, and finally, pounding on it, and then with all the different oils that we use, finally broke loose. But it took a long time, and maybe having this little mix right here could have been a big lifesaver in that situation. All right. So again, like I said, preparednessadvice.com. Hey, thanks so much for being with us this week. Really enjoyed it. Had a great week. A lot of great articles. Like always, if the podcast is not fulfilling your preparedness needs and you're looking for more great articles, make sure you come over to the prepperwebsite.com. Not the Prepper website, prepperwebsite.com. We post articles every single day, and there's no way that I could get to all of them. They're all really good, and you want to go and check those out. And so plenty of stuff to keep you busy. If you're new to preparedness and you're wanting to learn, a lot of good stuff over there. So, hey, if you get a chance, come out and share the episode 148 with your friends. We make it really easy for you on the website, theprepperwebsitepodcast.com, to share that out on all the different social media channels that are out there. And I love to connect with you. So if you get a chance to, drop me a line, that would be great. You can hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And even now, I'm a little bit more active on YouTube since I'm doing the videos. I'm recording the videos as I'm doing the podcast and throwing these up on YouTube. Usually it's the next morning because I need to let it upload and do all the things that it's doing. But so I'm a little bit more active on YouTube over there. Or you could always come to the website, theprepperwebsitepodcast.com, and drop me a line on episode 148. So, hey, hope you have a great weekend. Hope you get to spend some time with the family or your special loved one. Hope you get out and get some fresh air. Don't breathe the insecticide that they're dropping from the airplanes. If you live in Houston, that sucks. But those of you that are out there, go get some fresh, clean air and enjoy the weekend. With that, choose to live a more self-reliant life. Choose not to be so dependent on the government grid or the grind. Until next week, stay prepped and aware. Peace.